Setting, what?
Agenda setting?
Agenda setting, yes. Agenda setting is where the real power is. Because it's not who's got the best bill, but whose bill gets heard. Which issues Congress takes up. Are there a lot of issues that Congress doesn't discuss? You bet. There are a lot of issues Congress does not discuss. All right. You know, whether your bill on an issue gets heard or somebody else's, that's why the Rules Committee is so important. That's why agenda setting is so powerful. You know, who controls that? We have faculty assembly, same thing. What gets on the agenda? What gets discussed? Yeah, who's going to put the neck out there for something? All right, number 3, the delegate model means that a member of Congress votes according to go ahead, Jordan. Number 3, what do you got?
D.
According to the bureaucracy? Nope. It's not according to how the executive branch wants it.
What about D?
D? Oh, I was going to call Grant. I'll go with you next. Yes, D, the district. Just remember, delegate authority to your district. Or if you're in the Senate, to the state. So just remember D and D line up. What's the other model? Trusteeship. That means if I give you a delegate question, you might get a multiple choice on the trusteeship question. Or you might get an essay saying compare and contrast the trusteeship model and the delegate model. You got it? Okay, good. All right. When judges are able to provide their own interpretation of the Constitution, it's called what, Grant?
Judicial active.
Oh, I thought I could fool you all. Thought I totally owned you on that one. Guess not. Yeah, remember, judicial interpretivism, something we did cover, is what, Caitlin?
Oh, well, I'll put that as my answers.
Oh, okay. Well, what is judicial interpretivism?
Strict construction.
Yeah.
The strict constructionism. What does strict constructionism mean? Reckon. You're a strict constructionist.
Then you just say it in judicial interpretism.
Right, but what does that mean in everyday terms?
It means that you can only interpret the Constitution by what it says.
Like directly what it says. What the founders directly intended to. Judicial activism, whether it's done by a conservative or liberal, means that the founders set up the Constitution that it wouldn't be set in stone. That the Constitution would be a living, breathing document that could change over time, take on new issues. Our Constitution is vaguely worded for a reason, so that future generations can handle future issues. Judicial interpretivism goes, no, we have to go back to what the founders were saying. We can only go by what the printed words say. Incidentally, by the way, judicial activism is kind of like when people scream conservative media bias or liberal media bias. Everybody claims the media is biased against them, just like everyone says the ref's against them. Everyone says, oh, liberal judges are doing judicial activism. Or, you know, liberals will say conservatives are engaging in judicial activism. So it's something both sides accuse each other of. But the most important thing to note is, what do you believe? Do you believe that the Constitution is set in stone, that it was put for a reason that should only cover those issues? If you want new issues covered, you got to pass new laws? Or do you think that it's worded vaguely enough like a theory that can be interpreted in new ways? Judicial activism, active, a living, breathing document. It's another way to remember it. This also tells you that there is a chance that you will get an essay question saying compare and contrast judicial activism with judicial interpretivism. I'm giving you hints as to what essay questions could be. All right, John, which branch of the government does the Attorney General, FBI, and the Justice Department serve? You would be incorrect.
The executive?
It is the executive branch. If you don't believe me, can the FBI be hauled before the courts? Can they?
Yeah.
You bet. How can the courts haul the courts in front of themselves? I guess you could put a judge on trial for improper behavior, sleeping with a minor or something like that. But yeah, the FBI, the Attorney General, the Justice Department are part of the executive branch, law enforcement, not law interpretation. That's a psych out, if I can catch on that. You ever see that show? Was it, is it Brain Games, where they try and get you to think it's gonna be one way or the other? That's a Brain Games example. So read those questions carefully. Max Weber, Salman, recommended that a bureaucracy be able to do all of the following except...
Biospecialists?
Nope. He believed in the bureaucracy to be full of specialists. Quinn, what you got? Be personable. But that sounds like it being so nice to be so personable. Have a little sticker that says, "Have a nice day." A smiley face sticker. Why is that a bad thing according to Max Weber? Not so much look weak. Why does Max Weber say we need a government that is impersonal?
That would be bias.
It could lead to bias. You're more personable to some people than others. What Max Weber is saying is that the rules of the bureaucracy, which America has adopted, is everybody gets treated the same. My wife got summons for jury duty again. You know, it's like, it reminded me when I got called for jury duty, and I was heading on down to the courtroom, and I was thinking, it was like just before the semester began, I'm like, oh crap, I don't want to spend the first few days of class like in jury or something. You know, get me over the summer, then I get excited about it. I love serving on jury. Not at the beginning of the semester, you know, I have to pass up the syllabus, tell you how everything goes. And so I was walking on in, and Sheriff Donnie Turner, who was the sheriff of Troup County, he sees me, comes over, he goes, "Dr. Turner, it's great to see you. We'll do everything we can to get you on the jury." And I was like, no, that's, appreciate it very much, Sheriff, but just treat me like everybody else. What I really wanted was him to say, "No, God, no, please don't put me on jury." Not now. He was being really nice to me, you know, because we know each other. But you know, I was just telling him, just treat me like everybody else. Send me home after a couple hours. Yeah, so sometimes being personable isn't the greatest thing, because he was doing everything he could to get me on the jury. He said, "We'll get you to be the foreman of the jury." Which, I guess it sounds nice, I guess, you know, I find the experience interesting, but I just would rather be treated like everybody else. All right, yeah, because you don't want to bias government. All right, Ronald, how many senators are needed to maintain a filibuster? Amen? To maintain a filibuster. To keep a filibuster going. What you got, Wes?
41.
41. You need 41 senators to block key legislation. Y'all remember when Senator Ted Cruz was like reading Green Eggs and Ham, and he was doing everything he could to hold up a deal on the budget that he didn't feel was going to be a pretty good one? Y'all remember that? Where he was just going on and on. He, you know, why is one senator doing that? Well, he's got 40 other senators who agree with him, who are trying to hold off on the legislation, trying to run out the clock in December before everybody goes home. This is not a critique of Ted Cruz. I've actually met him. Seems to be a pretty cool person. Interesting. I disagree with him on some issues. I'm sure he disagrees with me on some. Reminds me of The Rock. Anybody heard of The Rock? The actor? He was actually a delegate. I don't know if he was a delegate, but he was definitely a visitor at the Republican National Convention in Philadelphia. And the National Public Radio reporter, when they were introducing him, he goes, "Well, I've never heard of you." And The Rock goes, "Oh yeah, well, I never heard of you either." I just thought that was kind of funny. And I think more people have heard of The Rock. Oh, great. And our computer is just all messed up. So at any rate, I have the answer key, but let's go over some of those essays while I'm waiting for the computer to not mess with my day. Incidentally, how many senators are needed to therefore break a filibuster? 60. It's something that they call invoking cloture. That is a really fancy term for break a filibuster. You know that the term filibuster? Can someone look up filibuster? My computer is low on memory.
The use of irregular or obstructive tactics by a member of a legislative assembly to prevent the adoption of a measure generally favored or to force a decision against the will of the majority.
that the origin of the term though? That's a perfect definition for American government class. Y'all know the origin of it?
A person engaging in unauthorized,
A person engaging in what?
unauthorized warfare or something?
Yeah. It actually goes back to privateer tactics, pirates and stuff like that, you know, just any sort of action where you're slowing down an enemy.
Dutch.
The Dutch, the filibusters, yeah. The Dutch had this computer is my filibuster today. This is a perfect example. See, look, Wes, it's still messing with me. This is like, it's like Space Invaders. Y'all don't know what Space Invaders were, asteroids, but these were early. Okay, I'm thinking our computer is sick. And not sick like in a really good way.
How many programs do you have running?
None right now, I shut down the computer.
Well,
I actually don't have a single application going. All I have is a mouse that will not click.
there's a lot of startup applications.
Yeah, I mean, these are, what these are just saying that things working. And I'll get the IT people to come out and clean it up on Friday. But anyway, let's go over the essays. And then we'll do an in-class exercise. Okay, what is Max Weber's concept of an ideal bureaucracy? Explain how America's bureaucracy has changed over time and whether it's adopted Weber's ideas. Oops, that's question 9, but we'll do that one first. So what's an ideal bureaucracy? We already talked about some of this. Things are working quickly. Better pull up something quick. All right. Go ahead. Ideal bureaucracy. Jordan, tell me one element of an ideal bureaucracy that Max Weber wants. It's not messing up on my question. Go ahead. What's one element of Max Weber's bureaucracy that's ideal? We covered one just now. For one of the multiple choice questions. Give me a shot. One thing that bureaucracy's got to have. First off, which branch does a bureaucracy serve? What do you got? I'm sorry? Executive. Perfect. Okay, good. So these are the everyday government workers. All right, Harrison, what's one element of ideal bureaucracy according to Weber?
Public administration.
That's kind of like what the executive branch does, but what's something that government is supposed to do? Or bureaucrats are supposed to do? Keep in mind, this is like our heritage about how we want our bureaucrats to operate. We want them, bless you, to apply today. Brecken, you got something?
Just that, I guess the opposite of being personable is being unpersonal, so you've got to be neutral.
Well, neutral in a couple ways. Treat everybody the same, but also be politically neutral. Keep in mind, you're not supposed to take sides. Do y'all remember there was like an Ohio clerk that didn't want to fill out marriage certificates in Kentucky? Do y'all remember that? See, that's very different because she was like saying, okay, I mean, the Supreme Court ruled on gay marriage. It said gay marriage is legal, and she said, okay, but I'm not going to like sign the marriage certificates. See, that would not be politically neutral anymore, right? It's just like, well, it goes against my religious views to do so. Okay, well, your function is like, okay, if you're a clerk of the court, you sign law. I mean, let's say I didn't like John Williamson. John applies for a hunting license. I kind of have to give you a hunting license, right? Even if I don't like you. Even if your dog is always knocking my trash over. Right? Does that make sense to people? And I understand religious views are, you know, you can resign, but your job is to do that. Thankfully, somebody worked out a compromise where they would just stamp like the state of Kentucky and that would be okay. That's one cool thing about America. Sometimes we get worked over little issues, but you know, if you put your mind to it, you can find a compromise that'll keep everybody happy. Does that make sense?
And she was arrested.
Was she arrested? Oh, yeah, I actually wrote a comment saying, God, don't arrest her. Jeez.
They didn't listen to you.
I know. Oh, I got a lot of criticism for that too. They're like, she's defying the law. Yeah, I know, but like, I mean, you know, that's, it's like that movie Basic Instinct where, you know, they said, there's no smoking here at the police station. The gal goes, what are you gonna do, arrest me for smoking? It's one of those, like, really? Do we have to arrest the person? Can't we just like send them home? Put them in detention? Oh wait, that is arresting.
Did she lose her job?
I don't know. I think they worked out a compromise with the stamping of something. Right?
Kim Davis.
Kim Davis, that's right. I mean, I'm sure there's sometimes where, you know, liberals are told, okay, you know, there's somebody's liberally oriented, they're like, okay, we're gonna go to war in Iraq. Well, I don't wanna go to war in Iraq, I'm gonna like mess that on up. It's not your call anymore. You can do your job or resign from your job, do a different job. Make sense? Yeah, that's politically neutral. What else should bureaucrats do, according to Max Baker? What you got, Solomon? Besides a purple pen. That's what
So what should?
What else should an ideal bureaucrat do?
Well, I mean, one of my questions, don't be personal.
Yeah, no, we got that.
Yeah.
All right. Got to treat everybody the same. Can't take sides in politics. What else? Go ahead, Grant.
The hardest question?
Yeah, you're looking for people who are specialists, experts in a particular field. This is very different from the folks we left, the British civil service. If you ever look at a British civil service exam, geez, you gotta like be a quadruple major to pass one of them. You gotta know a little about a lot of things. I actually thought, you know, because I play trivia, I might be pretty good at a British civil service thing. But if the U.S. government's going to hire you to work in the Department of Fisheries and Wildlife, you better know your field. You better be an expert in it. We don't want someone who knows, well, yeah, I know a little fish and game stuff. I also know all the World Series winners back to 1920. Okay, well, that doesn't help you in your job. It might help you if your next job is going to be sports management, right? Now, in British civil service, you move around. You jump around from job to job in the bureaucracy. You don't stick around too long in one area. They want you pretty well rounded. America, we want specialists, experts. All right, did we get them all, or is there one other? I know there's at least one other. Anybody else?
We talked about,
Oh, well, there's the merit principle. You got to be good at your job.
yeah.
You got to earn it. It can't be based on family connections. It's who wants it more. You know, the hardest worker, the person who comes up with the best ideas, they're the ones who should be hired. They're the ones who should be promoted
How do
as
you
well.
think that's going?
Yeah, what do y'all think? That's a good question.
Not very well.
Not at all.
I will say that I think it works fairly well through the bureaucracy when you get people who are appointed at the top, like the cabinet officials. Not always. There have been some good examples. You ever heard of Bob Gates? CIA director. Nobody ever heard of him? And he was the Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush in his second term, and under Barack Obama. Obama kept around the first term. This guy worked his way up from the bottom. I mean, he knows all the fields. He worked for Democrats and Republicans. He's a consummate professional. That'd be a good example. The current person there, Ash Carter. You know, when you get people who work their way on through. Where you get problems, I think, is where you get cabinet officers, where somebody gets appointed because they're politically well connected.
I just wanted to comment that when I look back on the jobs that I've had, which I think I've had a few for my age, there's only been maybe 2 of them that I got at random, like on my own applying, and all the others were because I knew someone who worked there and they hired me.
Oh, I agree.
So, you know, how far does that go? When you're 40 and 50, is that still?
Absolutely every job I've
Yeah.
had.
I think sometimes, like, you know, I'm not saying this is a bureaucracy, is it? Are we talking government jobs?
No.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, sometimes, I mean, if you think about it, outside of the bureaucracy, a lot of times, you know, those letters of recommendation matter.
Yeah.
The people you know matter.
When I apply to jobs that I have, no reach into, it's like, oh, nobody calls. But if I know somebody,
I mean, I got a job because at USAA, because my roommate had a job with them, and he was an outstanding employee. He found out about a job posting. He contacted me, it was like the day it was due, and he had a pen that ran out of ink. He didn't have anything else to write about, so he got on one of my posters on my door, and he carved out the phone number for me to call, like with a pen with no ink. So I come back and like my movie poster is like defaced, but it's like a phone number. And he apologized. He was like, I was just so desperate. I'm like, yeah, it's like a free movie poster. It didn't matter. I just thought it was funny that I just saw it look like something out of like a slasher film. Like, what the hell happened to my poster? And I'm like, 585. And then, okay, so I called it and it was like, and it said something job. And I called and they're like, oh yeah, we need to know, applications. Oh yeah, I could get one of those things. I used this thing called like internet to send this resume that I had. Seriously, not everyone even called it the internet back then. That's how old this is. Like the North in the Civil War, don't be afraid to take advantage of new technology. And then yes, have we adopted now? Make a good argument for which side you have. As long as you know what the answer is. What is the difference between 1973 Roe versus Wade Supreme Court case and 1991 Planned Parenthood versus Casey case? Sounds like Casey case, like the guy with the shaggy voice, the top portrait. Explaining how one ruling may be more conservative and why. Do y'all remember those cases? Who wants to take a shot at this one? Wesley shook his head. Those guys calling you, man. Nobody wants to take on this? What's the issue that they're debating on anyway? Both cases deal with what?
Roe versus Wade was the 14th Amendment.
Okay,
It's about abortion.
gotcha.
It's about privacy for, in the 14th Amendment case is about privacy.
Whether states can make laws based on.
It pretty much, it pretty much upheld, in most cases, a woman's right to choose. What did Planned Parenthood versus Casey adopt?
Undue burden.
Remember that. Undue burden's part of it. What's the other part of it? Tyreek, you got it? You got the cool Mexican soccer jersey? You don't have the... It said, tell me the undue burden thing. What's that all about? It said states can regulate abortion. In other words, they could restrict abortion so long as it did not provide an undue burden. So, this is an example of federalism, right? Meaning that each state could decide how they were going to interpret abortion. The Supreme Court could have ruled that as well. They could say it's up to every state to decide whether gay marriage is legal or gay marriage is legal everywhere, right? This is a federalism debate. Racial discrimination. Should every state and county be allowed to decide for itself whether you can discriminate? That used to be the law of the land. Did you know that? Heart of Atlanta Motel, 1965 case. You ever heard about this? Young couple came in. I think they were an interracial couple. Believe it or not, many controversial cases involve interracial couples. But a couple came in. They weren't too far from Atlanta. Pulled over for the night to get a hotel room. Clerk took one look at him and said, no, we don't serve your kind here. Got to move on. Became a Supreme Court case. The locals said, this is a local rule. There's nothing national about this case. And our county just decided that you have the right to deny service to somebody. Supreme Court ruled, this is like 1965, said, nope, this is on a highway. It's a national highway, therefore it is the Federal Commerce Clause kicks in. Interstate Commerce Clause, meaning that interstate trade can be regulated by the national government. They said the national government doesn't permit discrimination. That's one reason why, you know, when you're driving around the interstate, whether they like you or not, may or may not serve you.
Did that establish a whole new way of looking at the interstate commerce clause?
You bet it did.
Because I mean, even though that thankfully that happened, that sounds like a stretch. Like,
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, we had the interstate system, was created in the 1950s, not long after Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. My mom was always big into civil rights. She covered them in for a Michigan paper, got to interview some civil rights leaders. She made the argument that President Dwight D. Eisenhower, one of the reasons they created the interstate system was move military stuff around quickly, evacuate people quickly in the event of a Cold War, but also it was a way of breaking down discrimination. Because now the national government could rule on whether discrimination could be legal or not. She thinks that that's one of the reasons they set up the interstate system. Anybody been to Cherokee, North Carolina? This may not sound so. Nobody been to Cherokee, North Carolina? All my other classes, people are telling me about it, and I finally go and I get a class. Nobody been. Well, if you drive up to North Carolina, right, you're on a road. It's like 985, and it kind of becomes a road, and then it gets over to North Carolina. The road may change names, but that, I believe courts consider that to be an interstate road, even if it doesn't say I something or other before. Like the road would have to stop, like a dead end. Like that Chevy Chase vacation movie where they set up a big barrier and they jump station wagon through it anyway. Y'all seen that movie? Vacation movie? Y'all seen that? Going to Wally World with station wagon? Okay. Everywhere I go, everyone laughs about that scene where they get crashed and they go into the desert. When I watched it in El Paso, nobody laughed because they know that's life and death. All right, so what do we got for other questions? Privatization of bureaucracy. Tom, you want to take a shot at that one? What you got? Oop, sorry, I thought you wrote a lot. All right, I'll come back to you for number 11. You better be ready. Caitlin, what you got for privatization of bureaucracy? Uh-oh. Anybody answer that one? Nobody did privatization of bureaucracy? Sydney? No? Harrison? What is privatization of bureaucracy? Nobody knows? I just remember, that's what I used to do before I came here. They outsource jobs that bureaucrats do. They give it to private companies who bid on it. So if you think about it, you don't have to pay for those government employees' salaries. You don't have to pay for their health care. You don't have to pay for pension. You don't have to pay for all the benefits. Instead, you outsource it. Private sector will bid on it. Lowest bid usually wins. You get points for a couple things. Minority-owned, women-owned, veteran-owned, small business. You get some points on some contracts. But in general, the government's saving money, right? So my health care, pension, all that stuff was paid for by my company, not by the U.S. government. So it's a great cost-saving device. Anybody know when this really started taking off? Gulf War? Yeah, it was actually before the Gulf War. Believe it or not, a lot of this occurred under the Clinton-Gore administration. When I was working as a private contractor, it was during the Clinton-Gore administration, the last year or two. It's this idea Gore had about reinventing government. It kept the number of employees low. We were balancing the budget. We were running surpluses during this time. Can you believe this? The U.S. government was running surpluses. 97, 99, 2000. You know what surplus is? It's like we take in more money than you.
in the green.
Yeah. Like now we're running trillion-dollar deficits, but folks, we were running surpluses. It was seen as a cost-saving device.
What are some other examples of outsourcing bureaucrat jobs, like specific?
I mean, like a lot of jobs we've been on is like you've got some intelligence analyst or something like that. So you got to say like, yeah, one of our jobs was predict the next Rwanda massacre. So we had to look at all the African countries, Middle Eastern countries, Asian countries, and decide, okay, which ones are the most like Rwanda was before it blew up, because 880,000 people got killed by machetes like in a month. It's like not enough time to build up a battle plan, get people ready, drop them in on the ground. By then it's too late. The government wanted like, okay, give us a general idea 3 years out so we can start planning for this. And then give us a 6-month blinking red light. Which ones are the big problems so we can go in and rescue people. That was a job I had. What are some other examples where we see work is outsourced to the private sector? Locally? Statewide? Sometimes, yeah, construction jobs. Instead of having the person be an employee, a company will do it. That's an excellent example, Ron. Others?
You know, like military contractors and stuff.
Military contractors providing services over in Iraq. Halliburton was one. Blackwater. I'll see movies. And they had that movie about two guys who, what do they call it? Like Dogs of War or something. War Dogs, that's right. Good. Is it a good movie?
It's great.
Is it a great movie?
Best movie ever.
Good, 'cause I didn't find anybody who's my other classes was one that didn't tell me.
Best movie ever.
Best movie ever. Really?
No.
Okay, okay. All right. Judicial review. What do y'all got for judicial review? Ron, start me up. They can review cases. What does that mean they can do therefore? Not only can they review it, but what does that mean also? Yeah, they can overturn stuff. They can knock down an act of Congress by elected representatives by the people. Or the elected president of the United States. An executive order could be struck down. Hillary Clinton could close the gun show loophole in 2017. Supreme Court could knock that down in 2018. So it's like the president signed an executive order. She's elected. The court isn't. Yeah, it's one of the few cases where we do that sort of thing. Now, who wants a real challenge? Who wants my hardest question? Go ahead, Grant. Where do the powers for this come from? Where does it say that the Supreme Court has the power to do this? Yeah, this sort of e-pluribus unum sounds like kind of a pro-American kind of thing. Cindy, what you got for me? Where did the power of judicial review come from?
Is it just like when the executive or the president recognizes that they have power to do so?
No, president doesn't grant the Supreme Court power to strike down its own powers.
Marbury v. Madison.
Thank you. Marbury versus Madison. The Supreme Court took that power. They gave it to them themselves. You can't go to the Constitution and say, yep, can knock down acts of Congress, acts of the president. Supreme Court took that power for themselves with the case. Y'all remember this? I promised you it was going to be on the exam. You remember this? Win the war by losing the battle. They made the U.S. government, the executive branch, and Congress, they made Congress think they'd won. But in their own Supreme Court decision, conservative relative of my in-laws, conservative father of my brother-in-law, he told me one time the Supreme Court ruled on gay marriage. He was really mad about it. He goes, Supreme Court had no right to rule on that. Struck down DOMA, Defense of Marriage Act, signed by Bill Clinton, by the way, 1996. He says the Supreme Court has no right to do it. Nowhere in the Constitution does the Supreme Court have the right to strike down such a law that was passed by Congress, signed by a president. And my wife and my sister-in-law and brother-in-law were arguing that he was wrong, and I just kind of uncomfortably kind of backed out of the room. Afterwards, my wife said, "You didn't back us up." I was like, he was right. It's true. The Supreme Court took that power for themselves. Nobody's knocked it away from them. Nobody wants to, by the way. The Supreme Court usually has much higher approval ratings than Congress and the President.
What do you mean by having Congress and the President permitted?
Yeah, why did they allow that? Why didn't they just say, jump in the lake? Actually, several times they have. Anybody heard of Trail of Tears? Anybody heard of Trail of Tears? Did you know the Cherokee Nation took Andrew Jackson's administration to court and state of Georgia? Cherokees won!
They still got screwed.
Yeah, Andrew Jackson said, okay, Justice Marshall issues his decision, let him try and enforce it. And the courts couldn't, so all the Indians got thrown out of the Southeast.
So what you're saying is I can still get screwed even if I win a case with the Supreme Court.
Sometimes.
Great.
I mean, that's because at that time, the Supreme Court didn't have any enforcement mechanism. to force Andrew Jackson to abide by the rule. And so Georgia militia was called out, states started pushing Indians out west.
So do you mean, when you say, I'm just trying to be clear, why did Congress and President permit it, you mean when Marbury and Madison was first?
Yeah, that would be a good way. You can answer it many different ways.
Okay, I didn't know.
I mean, Al Gore, when he lost the Bush v. Gore decision, a late decision, he could have said, screw the Supreme Court, they can't rule on this sort of thing. Let Florida have every vote counted. He didn't. Day after the Supreme Court ruled, he said, we'll uphold the court's decision. What would have been best, would have been most fair, see, because most of the recount was occurring in Democrat counties. So yeah, there was fraud in Democrat counties, but they were only recounting them in Democrat counties. They also called Florida too early, which meant that a number of West Florida people, where they're the most conservative, went home early. So Florida was called too early. There was fraud in Democratic counties. There was an illegal butterfly ballot. Best thing would have been for this country is just let Florida revote a month or so later. We could have taken it. I know that doesn't, my Republican friends hate that, my Democrat friends hate it, but that's the way it should be. Fraud on both sides, let Florida revote instead of Kevin Costner in that movie. Did y'all see that movie? It was a swing vote. And you also have to know your checks and balances. Is it elitism and pluralism? We've covered that a bunch of times. Are y'all going to be ready Friday?
Yes.
Am I going to get a bunch of hundreds?
Maybe a 95.
No.
100s.
You know, believe it or not, this is true. With my American Experience class, we were looking at something. They gave the same test to two groups. And one of them, they said, well, here's a test. Hate to say it, but there are a lot of complicated terms on here. Discriminates against minorities. You use a lot of fancy terms, so do your best with it. The other exam they just gave it didn't say anything. Minorities did worse when they were told that they weren't going to do as well on the test. Yeah, if the teacher tells you you're going to do well, you're going to do well. So make me proud. Don't go against science. Study hard. Do well.
So we want the posting.
Can they anyone?